Hey, what's up, y'all? Stick around for a little bit. We're going to have two segments. Josh and Jared are going to join me a little later. Joel and Jordan and I are going to talk about the first half of the minor league season coming up. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Royals Farm Report podcast. My name is Alex Duvall. I am joined tonight by Joel Penfield, my co-host of 4 years. But we are also joined tonight by Jordan Foote, who does like a little bit of everything. Works for 810. He runs the website over there Inside the Royals, the SI affiliate for the Royals at the moment. So, gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? And Joel, I'm assuming you've seen that Bob and MJ, and by the way, really quick before we get started, we are recording this on Tuesday, July 5th. I know this won't run. You guys won't get to hear this until Monday, the 11th, but we are recording a little bit early because I'm going to be out of town, and there's some things we wanted to talk about recapping the season. So we're a little bit early here, but on this night, Joel, MJ and Bob have both homered. Give me a Vegas over-under for a Vinny homer later in the game.
I mean, I'm hoping, man, if all three of those guys go deep, I'm gonna go into like the full Squidward meme of just like future. Like I'll just be doing that most of the rest of the night. But I mean, it's gonna come for Vinny. The expected batting average and expected slugging. I mean, he's hitting the hell out of the ball. He's walking, putting together legitimately the best at bats in the entire lineup, taking that mantle from MJ. All three of them are producing now, and we'll see where it rolls. But it's at least it's a really cool story right now. It's really fun to watch all of these guys in there. Starting to get the young guys in the lineup a little more.
Jordan, how we doing, man?
I'm good, man. I think it is a really cool story. I have a message from Joel, actually. We were talking about, so the progression went from Julio Rodriguez talk, because we do that pretty frequently, to also this, and it was Joel's tweet about Vinny. Then we talked about Mike Matheny for a little bit. Then we talked about Julio again. Then we talked about Tiger Woods. So we had quite the conversation on Tuesday leading up to the podcast. That's just par for the course. I'm excited to be back, guys.
Let's recap the first half of the season so far. If I could do it in 60 seconds, this is about how I would recap the minor league season. None of the 5 teams, the Royals or their 4 affiliates that have played a full season so far, are playing extremely well. The AAA team and the AA team have had some really intriguing pop-up prospects and prospects that are just hitting the way we thought they would. The A-ball teams are struggling about as bad as the big league club is, and the pitching is bad all over the place. How am I doing so far?
Pretty accurate.
I'd say that's about right. Hey, the Columbia Fireflies are a second half team, so they're gonna get it rolling.
Yeah, they're like 7-0 in the second half. So the Fireflies have turned quite the page here, second half of the season. I think if I had to put my concern level just in general for the pitching across the system in terms of how concerned I am with all of it, it's like a 7.5 or an 8, because we came on this podcast, maybe not Jordan, but Joel and I came on this podcast this preseason, this offseason, and I made the claim that I thought we were going to see progress. And I would argue you can see a little bit of that in Ben Caderna, and outside of Ben Caderna, it's like, that's it. Almost all of the pitching prospects have struggled. All of the pitchers at the big league level have struggled. I don't really know, outside of like Ben Caderna's changeup, what you can point to right now as proof of the pitching development working in the system. Jordan, I want to start with you. This is the first time you've been on the podcast with me in a while. what can we look at for the pitching side of things and go, hey, that is a proof and a sign that this is working?
I was gonna say Ben Caderna, and that was gonna be my literally one or two examples. Like it's not good. My concern would probably be a 7. So like I'm pretty much right there with you with that. And just compared to where they should be and compared to the guys they've already brought up, it's not one of those things where like, oh, they can develop a lot of these guys, they'll come along and they'll fix things. Like not only is the major league level failing and flailing right now, the minor leagues don't have, a ton of guys that are going to come up and make a big difference. They could, but I mean, compared to even a year ago, you're talking about the farm system. And you're like, yeah, the Royals have, a bright future. Maybe it's because the big league team's so bad that we're kind of thinking we're down on the whole system in its entirety. But even guys like, and I hate to throw darts at guys so early, but like Frank Mazzucato, guys like that, where like you don't demand the early results, but they also haven't been particularly great. I know he's striking out a lot of batters, but I think Ben Caderna, one of the very few positives. I'm sure I could think of more if I had to, but man, there really aren't many. Like you can count on one hand how many positives. I don't want to say on both sides, but definitely pitching, just not looking too good.
We were talking to Kyle Bodie last week. Josh and I were about scouting versus development. And can you out scout bad development or B, out develop bad scouting? And I think what the Royals, if you look at Frank Mazzucato right now, they held after the draft last year, Caderna and Mazzucato out of games in the public eye for 11 months. They didn't pitch in Arizona. They didn't start the year with Columbia. It was 11 months until we got to see them in a actual minor league game. And when they came out, Caderna's been good. Panzini and Mazzucato both are striking guys out. Their stuff is clearly good enough. And I think that's scouting. In fact, Seth was making the joke that maybe Lonnie Goldberg is the only one in the organization doing his job. And to that, I want to point out it's a joke. It's not a serious accusation, but these guys clearly have the stuff. Like I look at Mazzucato pitch. It's like, okay, I see why you drafted him. I see why you drafted Panzini. But the development has to come in how they're performing in games. They're walking a bunch of batters. They get hit. They're just not pitching the way you think they might after an 11-month hiatus. And so it's like, I look at it and go, I'm with you. Joel, you tell me at what point can we look at any of this and go, hey, there's the positive. Like your concern level shouldn't be a 7. Joel, tell me why it should be lower.
I wish I could give you some sort of reason for optimism, but I'm kind of in the same boat with you guys. And it's not just the A-ball guy or like the guys in low A that are just making their debuts. It's Adrian Alcantara who has really good stuff. I think when we look across the system, you can very easily tell they drafted guys with pretty good stuff. Like at least one, a solid fastball that, they could command, and at least one pitch that's a secondary that you can look at as plus, maybe developing into that. And they can't control any of it. Alec Marsh, great stuff. Should be a big leaguer anywhere else. Walks the world. Noah Murdoch, same thing. Like 6'8" with the levers and what he's able to create. You think there's got to be a big leaguer in there. Nope. We haven't seen that yet. Asa Lacy can't stay healthy. Adrian Alcantara walks a lot of guys. Like it's just everywhere. Jackson Coar, when he was in AAA, was still walking a ton of guys. It's just a system-wide issue that I don't know where the fix is. I really don't. I see a lot of guys with a lot of flash and a lot of potential. Potential only takes you so far, and I don't know where the production has to match it at a certain point, and we just have not seen that so far.
Jordan, I think the most concerning thing is the biggest albatross I've ever seen in professional baseball is the Royals' infatuation with Kyle Eldred. And I promise to stop talking about him, but this is sort of a serious subject in terms of like, this is the future of the organization, because I almost tweeted this out a few minutes ago and then I forgot to do it. I think the offense is ready next year. I think in 2023, this offense is playoff ready. Maybe not good, like not the best offense in the league, but I think because now that 7 teams in each league are making the playoffs, I think you can have a top 7 offense in 2023 for sure. The pitching has to come along. The organization's unwillingness to move on from Eldred tells me that in some respect, they're okay with what's going on. They're okay with the philosophy, with the teaching, the disciplines, whatever it is Eldred's selling, they're buying. Otherwise, I think the performance, like you have to imagine they would have moved on, right? As quickly as they moved on from Bradshaw, and credit for doing it. Like Alex Zumwalt is awesome. I've been singing his praises for over a year now, like outstanding. So they've clearly understood that change needs to be made in some capacity. It tells me that they really think that Eldred and whatever the organization is teaching pitching wise, that it's working, or that they like it enough that they think it will work. I'm saying I don't think it will. The concerning point is if I'm right, not only are these pitchers not going to get better, but the system won't ever get better. If I'm wrong, then maybe, but it looks like at least a few years away. Like this isn't going to be an overnight fix with the regime they have in place. So I'll ask you is when you look at the pitchers they have, can you see a playoff rotation in them if they had some tweaks, or do you think this is a scouting issue where they don't even have the right players in the dugout right now?
I think it's a combination of everything, really. Like, and I'm going to make several points here and try to remember all of them off the top of my head. I think, one, the optics of firing both your hitting and pitching coach in season. I've seen that thrown around. I guess I kind of buy it. It's worth bringing up. I also think the loyalty to Cal Eldred, the friendship that he has with guys in that organization, I get that too. So they have reasons, not good reasons, but they potentially do have a couple cop-outs or reasons to keep him around, so I get that. I do think that they buy into it more than people think they do. Like, I don't think it's going to be a situation where the Royals secretly just don't like anything that Cal does and are going to get rid of him and it's going to be bad. I think when it does end, like, it's got to end. There's a 1% chance that they do, like, keep going with him after this season. I would like to think that it's lower than 1. It's going to be like one of those mutually parted ways type things, even though we all know that it's really not. I do, as far as guys coming back and fixing stuff next year, quote unquote, a lot of people see like the Royals firing Cal Eldred and then seeing the hitting changes, and they expect Brady Singer to come back next year, be dominant, and Daniel Lynch to suddenly figure it out, and Carlos Hernandez to be back up. Like, the odds of all of them hitting were very, 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 very low to begin with. So you're only going to get a few guys from that kind of group. I think Daniel Lynch is one of them. I think Brady Singer is one of them. I think Jonathan Heasley is going to stick as like a number 4, number 5 guy, and that's okay. I don't think that they can fix the bad ones, quote unquote, but I do think they can get more consistency out of the guys who have flashed. I think Lynch has flashed enough. I think Singer is flashing enough. I think Heasley has a good enough floor that you can get 3 out of that. Anything else, maybe Carr figures it out, maybe not. Maybe Hernandez comes back and is a good reliever, something like that. Bubic, I don't think, is a starter long term. This year was supposed to be about figuring out who belonged and who didn't long term. Now you're pushing that to 2023. The offense is going to be ready, not like top 5 or anything, but it's going to be ready to compete, especially if you get Nick Pratto up there when that happens. You get Michael Massey up there, guys like that. They have 2 conflicting timelines right now, and it sucks because this year they were supposed to figure everything out and then head into 23 on that same page. Now you're looking at 2 different kind of things. We're looking at an AL Central that has even Detroit's going to look to be competitive soon. The timeline was messed up from the jump. The timeline is still messed up. No one knows what the timeline actually is. This offseason is going to be huge. Like, I expect sweeping changes or close to it. Probably not going to end up being the case. People are going to be disappointed, but now I can't even remember the original question. That was my buildup of not being on the podcast for so long, is I just let it out.
I want to read to you guys the FIPS and the ERAs of some of the guys that we expected to be not the best pitching prospects in the system per se, but to be prospects, right? Like, these guys were going to be in the minor leagues. We expect them to potentially contribute to the big league team at some point in time. Anthony Veniciano, 7.07 ERA. FIP is 7 even. Scroll. Noah Murdoch, 6.59 ERA, 5.67 FIP. Shane Panzini, 3.57 ERA with a 5.64 FIP. Frank Mazzucato, 6.31 ERA, 5.59 FIP. Adrian Alcantara, 6.05 ERA, 5.21 FIP. Carlos Hernandez, 4.66 ERA, 5.16 FIP. Alec Marsh, 7.06 ERA, 5.14 FIP. Jackson Kowar, 6.34 ERA, 5.13 FIP. This reminds me of the 2019 offensive season where I won't remember this specifically, but I remember at the middle of the season, kind of like when we were doing this 3 years ago in 2019, we sat back and I looked at the Fangraphs leaderboards. The Royals had 8, counted them, 8 hitters on back then 6 teams with a weighted runs created plus over 100.
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't the 2 short season teams, but at least the 4 teams, there were only 2 hitters apiece hitting at league average or better in the minor leagues. Nick Prado was having a disastrous season. MJ Melendez was having a disastrous season. Sully Matias, Brewer Hicklin was actually the only guy hitting. But I remember, Joel, we looked back at that season at the time and threw Gabriel Cancel into our top 10 because we were like, nobody else is hitting. Like, this is horrible. This is so bad. It is so bad. What'd they do that offseason, Joel?
They brought in Saylor. They completely changed hitting philosophy, and now we're seeing the dividends of it.
You're telling me Alec Marsh couldn't be Nick Prado, that Asa Lacy couldn't be MJ Melendez? I think the talent's there. Alec Marsh has 100 strikeouts already. He's got
a 7 ERA.
Yes, it makes no sense. We talk about it in the group chat all the time that Alec Marsh makes no sense because he will strike out 9 with 3 or 4 walks, which is not good, but with a big power pitcher, okay, and like 12 hits and gives up 6 or 7 runs. It makes no sense. Like, a guy with that kind of stuff shouldn't be getting lit up. Kyle Bodie on the podcast last week was talking about his time in Cincinnati. He was at a high A game with while Asa Lacy was pitching against them. 97-99, great ride at the top of the zone, dirty slider, and they lit him up. And he said we weren't hitting him, he was hitting our bats. Like, that's not good. That's not a good reflection of what's going on with the development. So I look at the 2022 minor league season as the 2019 equivalent for the pitchers. Everybody is struggling. None of your pitching prospects are doing exceptionally well. Ben Caderna's doing good. Drew Parrish was doing great at Double-A for a 24-year-old, but nobody is where they're supposed to be and performing how we expected him to. So, Joel, I want to run this by you really quick. We talked about Everett Tiford and the potential to like bring him in as a big league pitching coach or something. In your opinion, are we at the point where wide sweeping changes like bringing in a pitching Drew Saylor are needed? Or are you in the minority? You think this can work?
Oh, no, I think you need to make wholesale changes. If you're like the hitting, like we talked about, the hitting is there, or at least getting there to where in 23-24, you're looking at a top 10 offense. I think that is perfectly within the realms of possibility. You have to be able to pitch. Like, even in today's game, like where it's very offensive driven, you still have to be able to get guys out. You need 27 outs. You need pitchers to be able to go and get those. I don't know if the Royals have enough to be able to sustain in a playoff series, or even hell, like a playoff chase, to be able to get those outs at this point. So you need to go and make some serious changes at the grassroots level and have that work its way up to the big leagues, and then we'll go from there. But I do not see how you can go into next year and think everything is fine. That is complete ignorance, in my opinion. And I don't believe that the Royals are at that point to where they think that is the perfect route to go, that, oh, everything is perfectly fine. Like, this is just a blip. It's a one-off year. You cannot look at it this way. Pitching is way, way too important to this team right now.
Speaking of Drew Saylor, let's talk about some of the guys who are hitting in the system, because it's basically everybody. Tyler Gentry, between high A and double A, 163, 164 weighted runs created plus. Logan Porter at double A, God love him, 150 weighted runs created plus. Vinny was raking. Dairon Blanco, for what he probably isn't in the big leagues, is raking in the minor leagues. And this, by the way, after getting off to a slow start, his weighted runs created plus is sneaking up there to 140. Rivertown down in low A, 2021 draftee, 80 grade name, 40 grade hitter. He's hitting really, really well. 136 weighted runs created plus. Michael Massey has like 14 or 15 home runs now between AA and AAA. Nate Eaton looks like a legitimate big league prospect. We put him in our top 30 this preseason for the very first time since Nate Eaton's been in the system. He made our top 30. He looks like he could be a big league semi-regular maybe. Tucker Bradley's hitting. Cale Emshoff, despite striking out all the time, is really hitting the ball hard. He's starting to hit from more power. He's cutting down on the strikeouts. Luca Tresh is hitting. Nick Prado is hitting again. I know the strikeouts are a little high, but what I can't wrap my head around is the Royals having this kind of season in 2019 for the offense, like we're talking about with the pitching. They go out, they make wholesale changes, and now you have one of the better offensive player development systems in baseball. You're never going to be the Dodgers. You're probably never going to be the Rays because they are the best at what they do. But you're in like either the very last team in that first tier or like the best team in that second tier of player development. They have done such a good job of developing hitters that for the life of me, I can't understand why they can't get on board with doing this kind of stuff to the pitching side of things. Go out and find your pitching Drew Saylor. Go literally what they did for Drew Saylor is they dug up like the third guy in the Dodgers system. Great. Go find the third or fourth guy in the Astros system who wants to be in charge. There's actually a couple guys there in the Astros system that are like Missouri, like local kids. I won't name names, but there are a couple guys in that system who are local products who I would bring in at whatever it takes to help out with the pitching, because the pitching absolutely needs this kind of overhaul, in my opinion. And we've seen the Royals do it. Like, I don't want to sound like, and I promise I'm almost done, but I don't want to sound like I'm just like berating the Royals for not changing. I am celebrating them for the changes they've already made. They've already done this to the hitting side of their player development. They're halfway there. Go do this to the pitchers, and you've got a shot, because your Nick Prados, your MJ Melendez's, they're in the system on the pitching side. You just got to bring it out of them the exact same way they did in 2020 at that summer camp.
Yeah, and the thing with this kind of generation wave of Royals baseball, whatever you want to call it, it was all about creating the sustainable contender, not the 2013 you flash, 2014, 15 you get there, you win one, you make the right moves, and then you go about. Like, that shouldn't have been the goal, and a lot of people didn't think it was the goal with this one. This one was you build a contender for 5 to 7 years, or 3 to 6, or 3 to 5, or whatever you want to do. You go from there. You have to have almost elite player development, or at least really good player development in the minor league system on both sides. It's like those old Chiefs teams where they had a really, really, really good defense, but they couldn't score, or they could score 30 a game, but they couldn't stop a nosebleed. Like, they never had both at the same time. Even with Mahomes, they still haven't technically had both, but they were so overwhelmingly good at one that it didn't matter. I don't think the Royals are ever going to be overwhelmingly good at one. I think the offense can be a pretty good unit, and maybe there's upside there. The pitching just has to pull its weight. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but like, don't be bottom 5 in all of baseball. Don't be that bad. And it's hard to look at the minor league system where it is right now and the arms they have. Like, we're talking about Ben Caderna. I thought of Ben Hernandez. He's been better over his last 5 to 7 outings. Like, there's only a handful of guys, literally a handful, that you can talk about and be positive about. If you bring in someone who, I don't want to say knows what they're doing, but is better at it and maybe gives a fresh perspective or whatever, that 5 or 3 can turn into, 5 or 7 or maybe 10 or something like that. Then you're working on a different timeline. It's going to work out. So if the Royals still want to build that contender, it also applies to trades. If guys are performing better in the minor leagues, they suddenly become better prospects. Like, it's crazy how that situation works. Then you're able to make those moves. So they need to make change. I'm with Joel. It can't be like a patch-up job. They're not in the position where, like, if they went 81 and 81 this year, 80 and 82, whatever, maybe you patch something up. They're bottoming out. Like, they're playing better, but they're still really, really bad. you can afford to not punt, but like go through that rebuild. And I know that people in Royal circles hate using that word. You have to see it through, and they're going to be stuck kind of in purgatory unless they do it. I think they're just going to have to bite the bullet.
Speaking of the trade deadline, let's kick this can down the road a little bit. The Royals have a really interesting situation on their hands in terms of, like I said, I think the offense is ready next year. I think this offense competes for a playoff spot next year in terms of, right? I think they're competing to be a top 5 offense in the AL next season. You can run with that, and you can try to overhaul the pitching and see what you can do next year, and good luck, right? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. The Twins went from really bad to really good really quick a few years ago. I also think that a few of the players that are like the big trade candidates are also like obvious trade candidates for a bad team in a lost season. Like nobody's asking them to trade Nicky Lopez. Nobody's asking them to trade Hunter Dozier necessarily. Like, I think people have brought that up, but like the biggest trade pieces I think they have, Michael A. Taylor, who's not going to be on your next contender, Andrew Benintendi, who's a free agent, and Whit Merrifield, who has the same amount of years on his contract as Michael A. Taylor. So, like, I know these are all guys we like, but they're also guys who make a ton of sense if you want to trade them. And they're all guys who could bring back huge pieces, or in a collective could bring back big pieces to help push this forward. So, Jordan, I can tell you want to say something about the trade deadline, but this is like a really big deal for them this year.
They're all begging to be traded without saying it. Like, Michael A. Taylor has reworked. He's walking more than he ever has, and he's not striking out as much. He is producing. He's still playing good defense. He's cost controllable next year. Like, he is screaming, at least his production is, trade me. Andrew Benintendi, no reports on talks of a contract extension. He's a good left fielder. He's still fairly young. The Royals are not going to invest in bringing him back, I bet. If they trade him, they can still do it. Like, it makes sense to get rid of him, then revisit it if you want to. It doesn't. They're not mutually exclusive things. And I think, Alex, you've probably tweeted that this year, I believe. We've talked about this. Like, Whit Merrifield, there have been reports, like, from people who know the Royals inside and out. Whit Merrifield says this has been like the most challenging year of his career. Maybe a change of scenery would help him produce better. He is the peripherals look decent for him. Like, I'm not saying that they're literally telling the Royals trade me, but like you read between the lines and they're like, man, get me out of here. Like, the production is saying, hey, I can help a contending team. I can bring the Royals back at least something, as opposed to you play Michael A. Taylor in his age 31, 32, however old he's going to be season. You bring him back, you have him play at an adequate level, then you let him go, and that's it. You let Benintendi play the rest of the year. He helps you out. You get to 70 wins or 68 wins or a nice 69 wins, whatever you want to do. You go that route. He leaves. You let Whit Merrifield play again under contract through next season. You waste away the rest of his, not prime, but post-prime. Like, the Royals have every reason. Even, I don't think they should necessarily trade Scott Barlow, but he's an option. Brad Keller's an option. Nicky Lopez is an option. They have a very, very, very finite amount of untouchables on that team that they need to be transactional. That's been the soup of the day, the soup of the year, the soup of the summer for the Royals. Time will tell. I think that post-draft window is going to be where stuff really starts to hit the fan. I'm interested to see what they do.
Did you see JJ Piccolo's comments today about being on the more aggressive side of that front office?
Yep.
Time will
tell.
Joel, any thoughts on the trade deadline?
I mean, there's a lot that's going to go on, but I think it's going to take until post-draft for us to really see any significant movement. And part of it is I really think they're going to wait on Andrew Benintendi until after the All-Star game, because he's likely going to be the Royals person there. So I would imagine they want to see him play the All-Star game for the Royals and then work on a move the minute he comes out of that game. I can imagine maybe a similar scenario for Scott Barlow. I know that the fans don't get to select, pitchers or anything like that, but that looks like that scenario could take place. I'm confident they're going to trade with Merrifield. I think there are certainly pieces that they can play now, like guys like Nate Eaton and Michael Massey, they can make that happen. Like it's not like there's going to be a massive hole at second base. Like you can plug in a Massey or an Eaton or Nicky Lopez for the rest of the year and then revisit the position moving forward, you have options. And that's a great place for a bad team with good players to be, is there are options to be made to make the organization better.
We've talked about the draft for 2 weeks in a row. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Joel, this is the last time we'll hear from you on this podcast, considering it's going on July 11th before the draft. So, Joel, right now, if you had to pick 2 players at the very top of your wish list for the Royals at number 9, like realistic options for the Royals at number 9, who are they? And the second piece of this is, do you think that player is the Royals' top prospect the moment they're drafted?
Okay, so realistic option, because my dream is still Cam Collier, but he's not making it past 5. I think it really is Jace Young. I think he's a guy that is a super advanced hitter. I mean, you talked about him. We talked about him with Joe Doyle. He is a big fan of him too. Him or Jacob Berry for me would be perfect. You can slot those guys in the lineup in 2023. In my opinion, you can plug those guys right into high A, start them in double A next year, and then let's rock. And then just find a position for him. I don't give a damn. If Jace Young's arm can play at third, then stick him there, pray, and just let him hit. And I don't really care. Or there's your second baseman right there that I talked about after you trade with Merrifield. But okay, my second option, and this would be kind of the underslot move that I think could come depending on where the fall goes. This would purely be the Royals betting on their hitting development. I would go take Justin Crawford.
Yep.
I like super toolsy, good outfielder. I mean, if he's anything like his dad was, then we got Carl Crawford played for the Rays and Dodgers and Red Sox. I mean, the tools are there for a really good player, and you're betting on your development to be able to get him to a solid hit tool and enough power to play. But solid outfielder, that would be where I would go. I wouldn't go anywhere near pitching, and that's not a slight at the Royals. I just draft hitters. Draft hitters.
Draft more hitters. That's going to be I'm just going to keep saying it until Sunday when they draft the pitcher at number 9, and then I'm just going to walk off the set at the Kingdom Bar and Grill, which we'll get to in a second. Joel, do you think either of those players have the opportunity to be the Royals' top prospect the moment they're drafted?
I think Young would have a good chance, and I don't know if he would be. I think he's easily top 3.
Okay.
But I think if you take Crawford, he's probably somewhere like 10 to 12.
Yeah.
But that could be even by preseason 23, you're looking at maybe your 7th or 8th. But if it's either one of those 2 guys, I would not say there's a surefire chance they're number 1.
Okay. Jordan, do you have 2 players at the top of your wish list?
This is such a cop-out, but like if I would have went through the order of dream, somewhat realistic, and then underslot, it would have been Collier, Jace Young, and then I'm already Justin Crawford. Crawford, it's a lot of first, there's a lot of smoke with him going to the Royals. It seems like every mock draft I see has him going to Kansas City. A lot of like MLB pipeline seem to like him. Then you had like the discrepancy of Keith Law having him really low on his board versus a lot of places having him higher. Like he's one of the more, I don't want to say intriguing, but like up and down prospects in terms of profile. There's also a lot of projectability with his game. Like, is he going to grow into his power? Jace Young, he's a stud. Like if he entered the Royals system, he'd be top 3 in their system, I think. Collier's just not going to be there. And I keep trying to like tell myself that he's not going to be. Then when he is and the Royals pass on him, everyone can collectively be more frustrated about it. But I think if Jace Young entered the Royals system, he'd be, I guess, 3rd. I'll go 3rd. And that's not an indictment on him. Crawford, like Joel said, he'd probably be 10 or so. The Royals still have quality prospects at the top of their, leaderboard. It's just not anymore the Bobby Witt Jr.'s, the MJ Melendez of the world. Nick Prado won't apply at some point. Regardless of whatever their plan with him is, Vinny won't apply at some point. They're going to have to do something, and I think underslot could probably be the play for them this year. Again, pitching, I'm not on that board. I know that, and this is not calling people lazy draft Twitter, but Kumar Rocker, they're, oh my gosh, he's back. I'm like, guys, just stop it. I know the name is big, but let's not go there. So I think me and Joel are on the same wavelength there, which kind of on brand. A little disappointing, but definitely on brand.
I'm not a big Justin Crawford guy. I don't know why. I'm not bought in. So it's interesting that you both are, because he's like the one guy that
He's
I've
just
seen mock
iffy.
the Royals where I'm like, no thanks. But anyway, gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate you both. It was a lot of fun. I am excited for the second half of this season. Like we talked about, the Columbia Fireflies are already 7-0 in the second half. So there's a lot to look forward to, because now in the minor leagues, different from Major League Baseball, if you finish the second half of the season in first place, you get an automatic playoff bid in almost all leagues now, I think.
It's low A, high A, double A, I believe.
Okay. So
Okay.
yeah, so the
So it's back to
Fireflies
the
have an
normal, back to the
opportunity.
normal format.
Yeah. So the Fireflies still have an opportunity to make the playoffs here, 7-0 to start the second half. So really quick, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor, Kansas City Strength and Conditioning.
From the beginning, we knew right away that we wanted to do strength conditioning and a throwing program for the baseball and softball community. It wasn't something we were trying to back into or all of a sudden learn. We knew we were really good at coaching these skills from the get-go, and the fact that we're in the same business and the employees are all on the same page, we can write a program based off of what a kid needs, not just getting him stronger or faster from a general sense. It's what does this kid need? On the pitching end, we can say, hey, this kid needs such and such. He needs to do this or that better. A lot of times it turns out it's not something that needs to be fixed in the baseball cage or on the throwing mound. It actually needs to be fixed in the weight room.
All right. I am now joined by my other co-host, Josh Keiser, and Jared Perkins, who is a frequent contributor for us. Like we said, we are recording this on Tuesday, July 5th. I know this isn't going to air until the 11th, but we are recording on the 5th. And as of right now, Jared's June Players of the Month is scheduled to come out tomorrow on the 6th. So, Jared, really quick, before we get into the actual conversations I want to have tonight, I want you to tell us really quickly about the Players of the Month in June, because there were some very not the usual suspects who were, I think, the Players of the Month. So walk me through really quick some guys you had in that article, because it was a good month for like that third tier of hitters.
Yeah, I think that the bats really showed up. I mean, as you all were talking earlier in the podcast, the bats are just outperforming the pitching right now. I think high A was the biggest competition between Diego Hernandez and Kale Emshoff. I mean, there was small statistics that put Diego Hernandez kind of ahead in terms of stolen bases and extra base hits and things like that. I really wanted to give it to Kale Emshoff, but it's just they were just neck and neck. So those two guys in high A were just absolutely mashing this month. Michael Massey, I mean, in like 12 games in AAA, absolutely destroyed all the other hitters in the division. And so it was just insane to see that. I mean, he had 4 home runs and 16 RBIs in about 15 games. Nathan Eaton was a guy I wanted to give it to, but then I was like looking at the amount of games that Massey played, and he put up more home runs. I think he had more RBIs. He was leading the team in RBIs, I think, for the entire month of June, and a 15-game sample size. So it's just been unreal to see what the hitters are doing. Pitching was a struggle in the low A Columbia affiliate and high A Quad Cities to find a pitcher of the month. I think Charlie Neuweiler got the high A pitcher of the month, but the performances weren't great. I mean, Penn Kudrina probably pitched the best in his pro debuts in the months of June, put up the best numbers. The stuff was great. When you just watch the videos of him, the fastball looks really good. His slider looks really good too. It's a little bit of development in some of his off-speed pitches that he definitely needs to get work on. But, I mean, you got to love what you see with him. So there are some guys that just kind of popped off the board too, like Rivertown. He was one of the Players of the Month for the Columbia Fireflies. He just was really productive this month in 24 games. Some other guys that I was kind of keeping an eye on in the Arizona Complex League were Brennan McNair, Lisandro Rodriguez, and Roger Layton. Those 3 guys have just absolutely been mashing in the small. It's been like less than 15 games in the Complex League right now, or in the month of June. So, but I mean, Lisandro's showing off some of his power and speed. Layton's just hitting like 9 doubles in 12 games or something ridiculous like that. And Brennan McNair just tools off the board. You love watching that guy play defensively. I've just seen some of the videos that came out in the offseason of him playing. He just looks really, really good. And it's excited to see those guys get pushed up probably to low A once the draft happens.
Mm-hmm. I was watching a video of Roger Layton's swing because the hardest part of like so much of scouting like these really low level guys is until you can see them in Columbia, like almost literally what we have is scouts who can see them on an everyday basis, their numbers, and then like batted ball data if you can get it.
Yeah.
And everything about Roger Layton checked out. And then I've seen Roger Layton swing a bat, but the video I saw, he's so much bigger than he was. It's like, oh, like this power might be legit. Like it's a fit kid. Like he has a short swing with good-ish hands, and he's filled out so much. Like the power might be here to stay. So I'm really excited to see what a few of these guys can bring to Columbia. And it was a good month. And the reason I wanted to start with that is a lot of the guys we're talking about, like I said, are tier 3 prospects in this system. They're not Michael Massey's. They're not Nick Prados. They're certainly not Bobby Witt Jr.'s. But they're all hitting like legitimate top 20 prospects in this system. So what I want to do is, Josh, we'll start with you. Give me 3 prospects, offensive prospects, who have really surpassed your expectations this year. It can be a guy who wasn't on your radar, who now is on your radar. It can be a guy who was barely on your radar, who is now a legitimate prospect in your mind. Or maybe it was a semi-legitimate prospect who you're now convinced is an everyday big leaguer / borderline all-star at the big league level.
Okay. I think I got to start with Tyler Gentry. I think I spoke at the beginning of the season. One of my hot takes, I think, was that he would be a top 15 prospect in our rankings once. And I kind of relied that more on the graduations that would be occurring. And then he would just be like a steady performer. But he has absolutely surpassed that. And I mean, sky's limit at this point if he keeps us up somehow. I mean, the BABIP is ridiculous. So I think there's some big time regression coming with Tyler Gentry. But we've been saying that for a month and a half. So who knows? Who knows? But I feel like not only is it a top 15 guy coming in with all the graduations, very well could be a top 10, top 7 dude. Maybe is the height of that, not including the draft prospect. So he's the big one there. He was on my radar, obviously, but whatever. The other one, probably Dylan Schrum. I had no idea, no expectations what Dylan Schrum was going to bring to the table. 24-year-old in high A ball. Has a WRC plus of 132 this year. The power is there. He's not hitting for average, only at 242 on the year, but he is absolutely knocking the shit out of the ball. And his walk-up music is Highway to the Danger Zone. He's got a great stash. So, I mean, he's already on my radar just from the awesome walk-up.
Does he wear a leather jacket to the plate?
Not that I saw, but that sounds like some Savannah Bananas type of stuff. So I mean, keep a lookout for that for sure. And the other one's Nate Eaton. I mean, you guys probably talked about Nate Eaton plenty in the first half here, but I didn't have that many expectations. To be honest with you, I kept getting them mixed up with Jake Means at the beginning of the year. So the fact that I know who Nate Eaton is now, it already speaks to it, but he's just having a monster year, a great start to his Omaha days that are hopefully short, and he's up helping the major league team any day now.
Nate Eaton, my favorite part about his ascension this year is that he's always hit the ball hard. He just could not, for the life of him, hit it in the air or at any kind of optimal launch angle. He would beat the ball into the ground, something vicious, and he would hit line drives like 4 feet off the ground. But now he is elevating the baseball with regularity. Like the hard hit line drives that the third baseman caught and it was like nothing are sailing over the left field wall.
Yep.
And it's like, I heard somebody the other day talking about Nate Eaton and they were like, maybe I was reading it, but you get the point. They were like, yeah, he's got all this newfound power. I was like, well, like he's always hit the ball this hard. It's just now he's hitting it at an angle that allows the ball to travel over the fence without defensive interference. Like this is the hitter development thing we've been talking about all night with Joel and I and Josh, Jordan and I were. It's like they can develop some hitters. And that's kind of what I've been just parading around on Twitter is like, look at what Drew Saylor is doing with Nate Eaton and Michael Massey, a 4th-round pick, Vinny, an 11th-round pick. Go give that man a horse. Go get a stallion in the first round and let Drew Saylor cook. Like I just don't
Vinny,
understand how they
Vinny's
can
the
draft
Italian
those.
stallion now. Is that the new
Yes.
nickname? The new nickname?
The Italian stallion, maybe. I
Italian
don't care what you call him as long as he keeps hitting. But Nate Eaton, that's my favorite part about it. It is 100% just development by the Royals. Like the scouting got him here, but if you go back and watch, he never really had a big year. And then he goes down the Arizona Fall League and hit like 400 for the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of singles. And now we're seeing the fruits of labor that have paid off working with the Royals PD system. This is what the Royals do really well, and they should do a lot of it, in my opinion. Jared, 3 hitters that have exceeded your expectations this year.
Yeah, so this one's kind of a cheating one, but I'd say Michael Massey did. I had high expectations for him going into the season, but I didn't think he was going to be raking this well. I thought he was going to be good, and he had the potential to fill like an everyday second baseman role, but he's by far exceeded the expectations I've had. I mean, he's leading the team, and I think he's leading the minor leagues in doubles. He's just absolutely the bat to ball skills, the ability to get barrel to ball is just insane. And then you have Gold Glove defense on the defensive side, so he's going to stick at second base. So he's one of my guys that I've really just I've had high expectations for him, but he's even exceeded those high expectations that I had. Another guy that I was looking at is recently when I was doing the June Players of the Month, this guy was kind of shocking that I didn't even know the Royals signed him this offseason as a minor league free agent, but it was Morgan McAuliffe. He is unbelievably getting on base walking at a near rate 15%. I think he hit 332 the month of June, 4 doubles, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, and he's been hitting the entire year that I haven't even really noticed. He's a 22nd rounder that the Angels took, released. The Royals pick him up, and they finally have figured something out with him. So he's maybe not a guy who becomes like an everyday big leaguer, but just someone interesting that to see that we can take a guy off a minor league free agency and also turn his bat around as well after he hit like 190 or something like that with the Angels. And then last, I probably would be taking a look at Nate Eaton was the other one I had on my list because then I wrote about him in the Arizona Fall League update. I was like, he might become a utility player potentially at the big league level. I was like, that's if he hits his ceiling. And now you just watch him play every single day. And like you said, line drive percentage is up, fly ball percentage is up, ground ball percentage is down on all his batted balls numbers. And he's just a guy he's versatile, can kind of play all over the field. And he can fill that utility role at the big league level and potentially more and actually get consistent ABs and be a consistent hitter. Where I thought I was like, he'll probably be a 4A guy who just kind of goes up and down. But now I'm actually thinking that he might have a full-time role on the big league team.
I don't know that they've had him play left field, but I do know in his minor league career, he's played shortstop, third base. I think he's played second base. Yeah, almost definitely. So. Second, short, third, center, and right, which means he can play left field. At this point, right? So he legitimately reminds me defensively, and okay, I shouldn't say reminds me of, but in terms of we talk about utility guys all the time, and Whit Merrifield is a utility guy in a sense of, would I be comfortable with Whit Merrifield at third base? Yes. Is he going to be very good? Probably not. Yeah. Am I comfortable with Whit Merrifield in center field? Yes. Is he very good? No. But could you put him at 5 positions on the field and I would at least not worry about him? Yeah. Nate Eaton is that way. You could put him at 6, 7 positions on the field and I wouldn't balk. Is he going to be an elite defender at any position other than maybe third base? Probably not.
Is
he going to be just fine? Probably. I think Nate Eaton, he, by the way, has a cannon for an arm. So if you're talking about a guy who could come up and play third base at the big league level, I'd be willing to give him a shot. But anyway, he can legitimately play all these positions and be fine. And that's the way Zobrist was what separated Zobrist from all the other utility players is the ability to hold it down at shortstop for a little bit. With most utility players, shortstop's the one thing they don't do well. And I think Nate Eaton could go over there and be fine. Now, long term for 3-4 weeks in a row, maybe not. But could he do it for a game once a week? Maybe. I think he could fill in over there if you absolutely had to have him to. So I agree with both of you. Nate Eaton has just been incredible Like watching him swing the bat in the Arizona Fall League last year, and I wrote about this in his write-up this preseason. I didn't realize how pretty the swing was. I did not realize how good his barrel control was in the strike zone because A, he's been hurt quite a bit in his minor league career, but B, he just kept beating the ball into the ground. And sometimes when that happens, it's just an improper attack angle. And sometimes it's an inability to get your barrel to the ball. I think the Arizona Fall League, what it did for me more than anything is he clearly gets his barrel to the right part of the ball frequently. It was just a matter of attacking it at an efficient angle to lift. And he's doing that now. And all of a sudden we see what's going on. And I think it speaks volumes that all three of us voluntarily threw Nate Eaton out there because he's legitimately been that good. And I agree with you, Jared. He's gone from a guy that I considered to be like a 4A rover type in the big leagues to this guy's got a future in the big leagues. He may not play every day. He may Kyle Isbell his way to the big leagues, but he's got an opportunity. And I'm really excited for him to have that. A couple other guys who, and again, the expectations piece of this is so subjective because of what we expected. So I don't know what other people expected from this guy, but I wasn't a big Luka Tresh fan. He's exceeded my expectations. I think the in-game power that he has shown off is infinitely better than I realized. And even though he doesn't get to it as often as you'd like right now, it's his first real go at pro ball. And I think Luka Tresh has shown enough defensively and offensively that you could reasonably expect him to be the third catcher on a 40-man roster. Now, to Royals fans, that may sound silly because the Royals have had 3 catchers on their big league roster this year at times. But typically that third catcher is in like Omaha most of the season. And then if Cam Gallagher goes down or needs a break, they bring that guy up and you kind of rotate backup catchers. I think Tresh can be that. And if you're talking about, prospect value, there's value in that. And we're also comparing this like to my expectation. I didn't think Luka Tresh would be a big leaguer. I thought it was cool that you get a guy like that, but this is also why it's important to make that kind of a signing that late in the draft is because you never know. You never know which guy is going to click and which guys won't. So getting a guy as talented as Tresh was a big deal for the Royals, and it's paying off. The other guy I'm going to go with is Tucker Bradley. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept waiting for us to finally be able to go, see, there it is. And he just won't let me have it. And the problem with guys like Tucker Bradley is I still don't think he's a big league regular, but damn it, he won't stop hitting. It's like he's not doing anything that screams like he's not going Michael Massey on us, but he's not like going Kale Imshoff's hitting now. But early in the year when Kale Imshoff was really struggling, I was kind of like, oh, okay, like maybe this is it for him. Like he's not doing that either. He won't go away. He's like a pestering little gnat that you just cannot get rid of at the barbecue. And it's like, I don't know what he is. I don't think he's a big league regular, but he hits right-handed pitching so well that I think there's a platoon role for him if he continues to build on his approach. Like he's got to quit swinging so much. And I do think that would be restrictive to him as he moves forward, but he's been so good. It's just like, I tweeted something out earlier this season. Michael Massey was getting all the hype with the Double-A team, and Tucker Bradley was out hitting him. Like he's been legitimately really good. So obviously Massey's gone on to Triple-A and continued to do that, and Bradley's still down in Double-A. But he's been really good, and I just personally didn't think that we'd see this from him at the higher levels of the minors.
His swinging strike percentage is just 10.6. So he is swinging a lot, but at least he's making contact with it a lot of the time.
Yeah. I was looking at Fangraph's leaderboard the other day. Did you see what Michael Garcia's swinging strike rate is? 5.5.
It's insane.
Sheesh.
It's nothing. He doesn't miss. And Jared, I want to get your take on this because I know you've seen him. But he does that big leg kick, step in the bucket. You would never teach that to somebody. It's like a bad mechanic, I think, just in terms of like the fact that he hits for almost no power, and yet it just doesn't seem to matter. Is that something you're concerned with, that leg kick?
Yeah, I mean, you probably want to see it toned down a little bit, but when he's having that much success, do you want to mess with what's working? It's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, it's kind of awkward and it doesn't work. And you look at, I think Joey Weimer's another guy I think of with the Brewers. He had an awkward swing and stance. You watch him swing a baseball bat and you're like, how does he hit anything? And he wound up being one of the top 100 prospects last year. And so like, and you look at Hunter Pence and other players like that who have just kind of weird quirks to their swing, and they find a way to make it work. And Michael Garcia is doing it. And he's, I think you tweeted out at one point, he had more doubles than Michael Massey, or was like the second to Michael Massey in doubles on the team. He just makes contact. He doesn't strike out. He gets on base. I mean, there's a lot to love with the profile. You want to see maybe a little bit more power, but with his frame, that's probably not going to happen. You're not going to see too much. But if he can hit 5 to 10 home runs somehow, and he's going to steal 20 bags, like, and with that ability to get on base, he's going to be super productive at the big league level.
I tweeted out a poll earlier today, and the only reason Michael Garcia wasn't on it is because I ran out of – they only let you do 4, right? You can only vote amongst 4. Michael Garcia would have been 5th for me. Yeah. And the poll was of prospects currently in the system, who should be – and I was asking the readers, in your opinion, who should be the Royals' number 1 prospect at midseason? Asa Lacy, Nick Pratto, Michael Massey, Nick Lofton, and then we'll throw in Michael Garcia. And let's throw in Alec Marsh as well, because I know some people were like, hey, don't forget about Alec Marsh over Asa Lacy. So we'll throw in 6 contenders for the Royals' number 1 prospect after – we're not going to include draft prospects, but when we release our midseason ranking after the draft. Before we get too deep into this, am I forgetting anybody? Anybody you guys would like to have thrown into the ring?
Not off the top of my head, no.
No. So let's stick with those 6.
4, right? Yeah.
Okay, let's stick with those 6. Jared, make a case for your pick of those 6.
Yeah, I think to me, it's I just wonder if Prado's going to get called up before the midseason even comes up.
Let's say he's still down. Let's say he's
still down
until August 1st when they trade Benintendi.
That glove is just so good, and it's just like that's what kind of gives him the edge for me over Michael Massey. The strikeout rate is probably a lot higher than all of us want to see. It's over 30% right now. But, I mean, he's the power. When he makes contact, the ball just carries off of his bat, and it's loud. And so he's a guy that, like, it's hard to not make him number 1, because if he can just get that down like 5% or 3%, just a little bit to more of a league average, he's going to be something that's just incredible at the big league level. I mean, you watch him play first base, and it's just he makes insane plays and picks over there at the bag. And again, Michael Massey's defense is probably just as good. But to me, it's just I want to give it to Prado, and that's just for the reason of him and how exciting he is. And it's just like having him and Pasquantino and that pop from the left side of the plate is just really appealing.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm same boat. I voted Prado, and I feel like Massey is kind of getting overlooked in that he's had a stellar year.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think his profile is definitely at least a everyday, bat or middle infielder or whatever you want him to do. It feels like he could do it. It just seems like the ceiling, like Jared's kind of describing, the ceiling of Prado is like multiple all-star games, potentially like top 10 MVP votes if everything goes right. It just seems like the ceiling is way higher for Prado. And like you said, if he just gets the strikeout percentage a little bit down, hits that average a little bit up, like if he's hitting a 250, you got to think the OPS is like 850. And currently there's only like maybe now there are only about 3 hitters on the Royals lineup that could potentially have an 850 OPS, not counting Salvi with him being out. And they're all the young guys, I think. So I was talking to you guys at the game. It's just so weird to have dudes that would hit 250 and an 800 OPS because they could draw walks and hit for power. It's just a weird thing because I'm so used to guys hitting 260 and having a 706 OPS. So it just seems like Prado is the guy that is going to be able to produce in that lineup a little bit heavier than Massey is, even though I think Massey's got everyday fielder on him somehow.
I'm glad I looked this up because I would have been wrong. But at one point, Nick Pratto had lowered his strikeout rate since coming off the concussion IL to like 27%. That is back up to 30% since May 12th, and it's like, what, 30% for the year as well. So I agree. Yeah. You would like to see that strikeout rate come down, but I've made the point in the past. I don't think he swings enough. I think I think the reason that Vinny is up now and Nick isn't, the reason that Vinny has a higher floor than Nick is because Nick is so steadfast on looking for a specific pitch that he doesn't swing at the pitch he could easily drive the other way for a single or a double because he's so steadfast on hunting for that home run pitch. Where like Vinny the other day swung at a 3-1 pitch that was out of the zone, and I was like, ooh, oh no, Vinny, like don't swing at that. But you have to like give him credit where it's due is, yeah, it's 3-1, but the pitch he's looking for is here, and the pitch he swung at was 3 inches above. It just happened to be 3 inches above the zone as well. So he's like a little bit more willing to move the strike zone based on, I'm looking for this pitch, and if it's relatively close, I'm coming out of my shoes. And right now, Prado is being so selective, he's not getting to that pitch. Mm-hmm. So his swinging strike rate is whatever. It's lower than Emmanuel Rivera's was, right? And Emmanuel Rivera doesn't inherently have a strikeout problem. But I think Prado's approach is sort of like actually the opposite. Like he is the example that people give. It's like when I get on the Royals for swinging too much, people go, well, like, yeah, well, Prado doesn't swing enough. It's like, okay, yes, he is like the extreme other example, the most unroyal player in the system. But because of that, if I had my vote, and if you just asked me who I would have number one, I think I'd pick Nick Lofton. There is nothing that Nick Lofton can't do. I think he is the quietest superstar in the system. And Josh and I were going back and forth earlier today about Lofton versus Massey. And, you know, he was ribbing me a little bit, but how can you pick Massey over Lofton, and what's the argument? And if you just want to compare Lofton and Massey, better hit tools, Nick Lofton, better speed, Nick Lofton, better defense. I know Massey won the Gold Glove at second base, but he was playing on a team with Nick Lofton who was playing third and short and center and left. So I think Nick Lofton is an equal defender as Massey at second base, but extremely more versatile. So the edge for me is Nick Lofton. They have about the same approach in terms of, I think Massey should walk more because he swings too much. And I think nobody's walking Lofton right now because he wasn't flexing that power. So their approach is similar. I do think long-term it will be Lofton, but we'll call it an even there. And then the in-game power is clearly Michael Massey. But I think we sleep on Nick Lofton's power. He hit a ball 411 feet the other day. Like, he's a year younger than Michael Massey is. So anyway, when you're comparing them straight across, I actually think it's Lofton. I think Lofton's the best prospect they have. I tend to side on the side of floor. Like, I would rather rank like last year I ranked Omar Hernandez a little too high because I was pretty sure his defense would carry him to the big leagues. I'm not so sure about that anymore. But like I tend to hedge toward the floor a little bit. So, you know, if you were more concerned with ceiling and all-star ability, I get having Nick Prado number one. And frankly, I had to fight myself to not take Prado and Lacy over Lofton. It's close. Yeah. But Nick Lofton's floor is a big league regular. There's not a scenario in my mind where Nick Lofton is not a big league regular. And I don't think you can say that about almost literally anybody else in the system. I can see a situation where Michael Massey never plays against lefties. I can see a situation where Nick Prado never plays against lefties. I can see a situation where Asa Lacy is a reliever. I don't think there's a situation. I mean, obviously it exists, but it's a very small percentage of outcomes where Nick Lofton is not a starter every day in the big leagues in some capacity. And that's why I've taken him number one.
My question on that is, and if we're just by using your argument about floor, if we're just assuming health here, Lacy's floor has got to be the highest of that group, right? I mean, as a back end,
just because he's a pitcher, I would say no. Just because he's a pitcher with all the injuries. Now, if you're talking about Asa Lacy's equivalent, like let's just assume Asa Lacy is healthy, then yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I would agree. But
if he's healthy, and obviously that's the big question that is keeping him and absolutely plummeting down rankings boards at the moment. But if that is the thing holding him back, and we're assuming that that's not on the table, his floor probably back into the bullpen. And is that like, is Aroldis Chapman not? I don't know. I don't think Lacy's going to be Aroldis Chapman, but is Aroldis Chapman more valuable than Whit Merrifield at this point? The super utility that's just really consistent.
no, I see what I totally get what you're saying. And if you could guarantee me Asa Lacy was healthy, then yeah, I'd take him number one in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's kind of the reason that I've been banging the drum about draft more hitters is there is no such thing as a pitching prospect. And I am like slowly being dragged into this. Like I never wanted to believe it. I really hate that saying. I hate the phrase. I never really liked it when people brought it up. And it's like, yes, there is. Like, come on. Like I get it. Pitching prospects are volatile, but there's such things as a pitching prospect. And now I'm like becoming like the old man, like, oh, no, there's not. They all suck. So it's like, but that's the thing is if you pay Asa Lacy $7 million and he gets hurt, he's Kyle Zimmer. And Sean Newkirk pointed that out on Twitter, and I was like, God damn it.
That's what I wrote. I wrote in my notes.
Say that out loud.
Lacey's got the Kyle Zimmer effect, and I cringed typing that out.
Yeah, talent-wise, he is clearly the number one prospect in the system, I think. Like, it's not even close.
Yeah.
But just in terms of, is he ever going to pitch again, I would probably lean Lofton. So before we end this discussion, I want to get your draft takes because it's the last time I'm going to talk to y'all until the draft. Jared, the same question I asked Joel and Jordan. If you had two players at the top of your wish list for the Royals at number 9, who would they be? And do you think they're the Royals' top prospect when they're drafted?
The two that I have are going to be college bats. I obviously want them to take a college bat. It's going to be Gavin Cross and Jace Jung are the two guys that I'm looking at. They're to me, they're the most polished bats outside of Jacob Berry. Those three guys are all kind of hand in hand for me. Gavin Cross, I think, kind of fills a need. He could potentially play center field. And then you look at Jace Jung when you have a kind of a hole at third base right now where they're trying to figure out what to do there. He's someone who could potentially slide over to third with his arm strength. So those are the two guys that I'm kind of looking at the most. If they take a pitcher, they take a pitcher. Fine, whatever. I saw, Joe Doyle's tweet about Connor Prelip and how the Royal Scouts have been all over Connor Prelip. So that's like a kind of a little bit of an underslot option there for them because I think he's somewhere in the mid-20s potentially to get picked. But would love to see a college bat, especially the way that we've been developing them. Get some more thump in that lineup. Get a guy like Cross or Jung in there. It would be fantastic.
Do you think that either Cross or Young would be the Royals' top prospect?
I think they fall in around number 3 or 4. I think depending on whether Prado graduates and Massey graduates. I don't know if Massey will quite graduate from the prospect list by the end of the season. He could via the trades that might happen at the deadline. But I think he'll probably throw him around in 3 and 4 because he still have Ben Kudrina, Nick Lofton that we've talked about. Asa Lacy will probably still be ranked at the top even with some of the injury issues. So I'd say around 3-4.
Josh, do you have two players at the top of your wish list?
Number one with the bullet it's not realistic at all, but I need Elijah Green in my life. I need it. I'll relocate my family and sell my house if I could make Elijah Green in somewhere in this Royal system. That guy is an absolute freak.
Yeah.
He is a monster. And I just want him. I just want all of his essence in the system just to see what they could do with him. So that's number one on my list. But if we're talking realistic, Jace Jung, definitely on that wish list as well. And I'm also going to go Jacob Berry as well. Seem like two really polished hitters in that college, and so they should be fast tracked. I want that. I spoke with it about it before, but I just want that cornerstone third baseman. And you guys have talked about I don't care about defense. I just need that bat in my life to bolster this lineup. And those two guys would do it. They'd be here, kind of staggered in with this big wave of prospects that's coming in this year. So you maybe wait 2 seasons for him. And he's the one that maybe they're the ones that put you over the top with that. with that lineup. But I want to see that, or I want to see the lower levels restocked with upside talent and just to get them in the building with the Drew Sailors and see what they can turn those dudes into with their upside talent. So maybe they could do both of those, bolster the higher upper level wave. Great. If they can also stock the lineup or the back lower half of the minor league system with high end wild card talent into it as well. So that's kind of what I want to see in this draft. But those three guys, and if I need to sell my house, I got a realtor ready to go. If I need to do that, I am willing to do that for Elijah Green.
Did you guys know that if you're looking for the best selection of Royals tickets, you can check out my friends over at Tickets for Less. At ticketsforless.com, you'll find the best selection of Royals tickets at the best prices, and you'll never pay outrageous per-ticket service fees like you would on other sites out there. Plus, if you use our exclusive partner code, you can save even more money on your tickets. Simply use promo code KCSN22 at ticketsforless.com to save on any Royals ticket order. That code again is KCSN22. Memories for life. Start at ticketsforless.com.
Sometimes the best transition is no transition.
Amen, brother. Okay, Jared, last thing before I get you out of here, I want to get your take on this. I don't understand. I think there's a market inefficiency in the draft. Let me tell you what it is. I don't understand why, if the Royals want to underslot at number 9, they don't take Drew Gilbert.
Yeah, I mean, that's a solid selection. He's got projected to go in like 25 to 30, I think.
Yes.
Some mocks had the Giants taking him. I mean, he's a solid college bat. I don't know if he has the ceiling that, say, the Barry and the Jung, and he's not as polished as those guys are already. But again, if we talk about having Drew Sailor to go work with this guy, he's someone that could unlock a ton of potential out of Drew Gilbert. And if you want that underslot option, he fits perfectly right in there.
This is my thing with underslotting in the Royals. The one time that they underslotted when it worked, they took a college hitter. They took the best college hitter in the second tier of the group, and they got Hunter Dozier out of it.
Yeah.
They got Sean Manaea out of it. Why? I think the market inefficiency is not to underslot prep pitchers who are the single most volatile players in the draft. Not the hurt college kid who's coming off of Tommy John surgery. It's the best hitter in that second tier of college bats. Go get Drew Gilbert. He's going to make $2.5 million, $3 million, maybe if he's drafted. Give him $4 million, give him $3.5 million, $4 million, save yourself $1 million, $1.5 million, and then throw it some kid that you really like down the board. Don't spend your money on volatility. If you're going to underslot, I think the market inefficiency is on the Drew Gilberts of the world, is on the Dylan Beavers of the world. Go get like that best hitter in tier 2 where there's still a good floor built in and see if you can't unlock the ceiling. I don't know. I really like Drew Gilbert specifically, but I don't understand why more teams aren't doing this, because they do it at the top of the draft with like the second best hitter. Like the Orioles have done it with Colton Keiser and Heston Kjerstad. They've unlocked that market inefficiency of like college bats, but they haven't done it to the extreme yet. Like, I think that's the inefficiency. And if I were the Royals and you wanted to underslot, like personally, I'd just take Jace Young. But if you wanted to underslot, go get Drew Gilbert. Like, I think he'd be a great fit in the system as well.
Yeah, you got to love the personality he brings to the field, too. I mean, he plays a high intensity. He's going to go out there and he's going to try to win for his team. And those are the kind of guys that the Royals love having in the system.
Last thing, really quick. Speaking of Nate Eaton earlier, I forgot to mention this story. I got a text from a former player recently, no longer with the system, and we were going back and forth about life and making sure, just seeing. I never really did talk to the kid much when he was in the system, but since he's left, just checking up on guys, see how they're doing. I asked him about Nate Eaton because I think they played together. And even if they didn't, they were in spring training together, right? So I asked him about Nate Eaton. He goes, I'll tell you this. He's like, if I were to get in a brawl and I could only pick one teammate to come help me, it'd be Nate Eaton. And I was like, okay, love it. I'm in. I don't need to know anything else. Can he hit? Don't care. Can he run? Don't care. Field? Don't care. If he can fight, put him on my team. And he can be like our enforcer on a hockey team. Just go sit down there, Nate. When I need you, we'll call on you. But I thought that was a pretty cool little story
Yeah, I got Nate
I
Eaton and
forgot to
Amir
mention
Garrett
that.
who will jump in dugouts. So
Yeah.
you're set.
Go feet
So-
first into the dugout. Just see how
Throw
many
in a
guys.
Greg Holland in there, and we're set
Yeah.
there.
That's outstanding. Well, fellas, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys joining me. The first half of the minor league season is over. We mentioned earlier the Fireflies are off to a 7-0 start. The second half is underway. We will see you guys on draft day. So really quick, before we get out of here, I want to tease a few things. Today is July 5th. This will air on Monday the 11th. On Sunday the 17th, we're having a live draft show at the Kingdom Bar and Grill. It'll be me and Josh. We have a couple other guests that will come in. We're going to get Jared to call in right around the Royals pick. So Jared will be a part of it. Joel's going to call in and be a part of it. Joe Doyle of Prospects Live is going to call in, give us his reaction. So we've got a lot of guys who are going to be a part of this. It's going to be really cool. So thank you, A, to the Kingdom Bar and Grill for having us, but B, BJ and the guys at KCSN for getting this set up. It's going to be a great time. Another thing, at the time you're listening to this, the RFR draft guide has been out for a few days. Please make sure you go buy that. There has been so much work put into the draft guide. I cannot wait for you all to see it. We have 100 write-ups on our top 100 prospect rankings, a state of the farm system, the top 5 players at each grouping. We're going to give away a couple copies of the draft guide on Twitter, so make sure you're following. But please, please, please consider buying it. It's $3.99. All of that will go to the writers who put in countless hours to make this work. Also, Jacob Milham for printing it up for us. It was just going to be a Google Doc. I'm not going to lie. I was going to turn it into a PDF, and he has made it beautiful. So please make sure you consider buying that draft guide because it is going to be outstanding. There will not be a better piece of Royals specific MLB draft content out there. Please consider buying it. It will be well worth your money, I believe. So, gentlemen, the draft guide, the live draft show. Anything else? All right.
Nope.
Till
Have fun
next
out there,
time,
everyone.
knuckleheads. We will see you all very soon. Good night, Canada.